Hi, welcome to this Great River Rapport workshop on winterizing your honeybees. We're here at Maitland Tower, joined with Luc St. Pierre from the St. Lawrence River Institute, who will be running us through this workshop, which is both in person and virtual today. So here is Luc.
Hello. So it's me and Todd who are going to be doing most of the speaking, and I think it's at least from my point of view, I've been to a lot of these beekeeper workshops at different places, and it's nice if it's usually something kind of informal, and if anybody has a question immediately when we're talking about something. I always preferred that when I go to one of these meetings. So if Todd is okay with that too, I think just ask away, and even if we get off topic from winterizing, that's always fun too. So Todd and I brought a couple of different pieces of equipment on how you can winterize, and I imagine everyone who has bees here, or even if you don't have bees now, if you're interested in bees and you've done a little bit of research, you'll see that there's many different ways of every aspect of beekeeping, from winterizing to collecting honey to processing honey. Everybody has an opinion. So what we're going to show you today is not maybe the best thing for you in your situation, but for us it's going to work, and somebody else might have a different opinion and for them it works. So it's really just like someone said a while ago, like you said, just to get some tips, and maybe you might find that tip really helpful in your situation. So Todd, it's his bees that he has in the back over there, so he made the decision to go with this equipment here. So I'm gonna let Todd sort of explain initially what we're going to be doing, and then I'll show some methods that I've used in the past and what I use currently, and I think maybe we'll just go from there. That sounds okay?
Sounds great.
Okay.
So I'm Todd Royer. So we are just backyard beekeepers. If we had 100 hives like Luc has, we would probably go about doing things a little differently, because it'd be a bigger operation for us, and we'd really have to account for the expenditure of money. But we're a smaller hive, so what we want to worry about, I guess, we want to worry about protecting bees from the wind. We want to give them a little moisture. We want to help protect the heat in the hive, help to protect the vicissitudes of temperature, especially as the climate begins to change. We get real swings in temperature, and how can we help to moderate that so they don't wake up too early and then freeze. We want to help manage moisture in the hive as much as we need to. Bees have been around for a long time without our intervention, so they've coped with all of these for a long time. So we're just having to adapt a little bit to an artificial situation that we put them in by putting them in a hive body. They're not in a tree trunk, right? So what we've chosen is to put a little bee cozy around our hive bodies. I don't know if you've seen these before. They're really slick. They're about $20. You'll see them just slip right on. You staple these to the hive body. You cut a hole at the top where the top entrance is. You make sure that the bottom entrance is open, and voila, you have a nice air barrier that keeps wind penetration. There's a little bit of insulation to it. It's black, so it'll capture the summer heat. You can already feel the heat heating up on this side where the sun is. It's nice that way, and it's really slick and easy. We got these up at Cleary Feed and Seed. We get our bee equipment there. Connor's really supportive of the beekeeping movement. He puts out a lot of nukes and a lot of equipment as well. So we're gonna put that around the main part of the body of the hive. We have two hives, and hopefully we'll be able to show you a video that we did when we checked them out about 3 weeks ago, just so you can see inside. We're not going to open them up today because it's a little cool. Someone was asking, we were talking earlier, someone was asking about a Vivaldi box. Who is that? Harold? So I saw this online, and it's a box that how it's designed. There are 3 chambers, and on these outside chambers we're going to put wood shavings as insulation, and then we'll put our fondant sugar in here for feed, so the bees can come up through the hive and feed in the fondant, and it will still be insulated for the winter. It has an entrance to the outside. I think it's meant for the top top plate to come off and for this to sit on the top. It has little cracks in the side here for ventilation. And this is what a Vivaldi box does. It offers ventilation to the top so that moisture can escape. I think that's a bit of a questionable practice in our northern climate. Because as builders, we know that the cold will penetrate into the box then and will make the metal screen wet or cold, and water is definitely going to condense on there. Definitely going to condense on in here, and it's going to cause dripping. So the Vivaldi boxes that I've seen had big grooves for ventilation. It was like the moisture was all going to leave the hive. Well, bees need moisture, right? So so we're going to leave our what do you call that? The
inner cover?
The inner cover. We're going to leave the inner cover on so that if water condenses on this, it'll drip on the inner cover and not on the bees. Because the bees, if they get wet, then it conducts the heat away from them and they die. Because, I think they need to be 50 degrees or so in order to make it through the winter. So that's what this piece of gear is. That's going to be for one hive that didn't produce as much honey this year. So we're going to give them a little sugar to make it through. Our other hive body, it's their first year. We've left the medium super, which is full of honey, on top of it. So they have loads of honey for the winter. They're going to be partying all winter long if they can survive the mites. So we just have an extra, I have a regular size lid on it. I'm going to put this on top, and we're going to put a styrofoam piece, and it's something like this. And probably some of you do this with yours. We're going to put it right inside here to provide some insulation. I don't know. Some folks do this winter and summer to protect from the heat.
Yep.
In the summer, do you do that? Keep it all
I
year
don't.
round?
I don't, but I even have some of my equipment I had purchased from beekeepers who I'd retired, and I even have some outer covers that have it's thick outer cover, and there's a layer of kind of a styrofoam or insulation inside of there. So yeah, some people keep it all summer to just regulate things a little bit better as well. Yeah.
So that's pretty simply what we're doing. We're going to also put a reducer in the front of the hives. A little advertisement going on here, unintentionally. But this is the quality of the sawdust or the wood shavings that we're putting here, and it's just good old oak shavings that my friend Pete has so gladly supplied. So we'll fill that up. I have the sugar out by the hive. I've made fondant for them. I didn't have very good luck doing it. I just can't seem to get the fondant to whip. But it's sugary, so it's a mass. So you have some things there. You want to talk about what you have, Luc, and what you normally do?
Sure. So in my time keeping bees, I've used a few different things. And so some of the considerations, and I've never used what Todd has here, but what I like about it, for one, like he said, it's black, so it's going to absorb that heat from the sun better than something that wouldn't be black. But also what I like to consider when I would be choosing something to use, it would be something that can be reused for many years. And just looking at this, it looks like pretty sturdy plastic, and I expect that it should be good for many years to come. So when I started, and like Todd, I would just have a few hives laid out in a field. I started with a similar idea to that, but it was this black tar paper. So as you could see, this one looks pretty rough because it's been used many years in a row. Now, what's nice is that, again, it's black, so that's good, but it's also easy to install, and it can be used several years, except that, I don't know if this one showed it, but little animals, I don't know what it is, skunks or something, who like to eat bees, they did come and rip it up, and then I'd come in the spring and sometimes it'd be all ripped up, and you can try and use it again, but every year it becomes more sketchy. So I kind of got away from this only because not being good anymore.
Well, this is a recyclable product. Any place where you can recycle asphalt shingles, you can recycle tar papers.
Well, that's great for me to know because I got a lot of these things, and I've just been holding on to them because I don't want to put it in the garbage. So
we take ours to Kingston to Kimco.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Now I got my tip for the day, so that's good for me. So like I said, in the beginning, when I just had a few hives, I would wrap them all individually. And then when I started growing and had many hives, I start keeping them on a wooden pallet. And so I would have 4 on a pallet. Little ants love to bore holes, and then you can see this one has all holes, or the mice will come in and chew it all up. So again, it's a nice product, but maybe one of these Vivaldi boxes, which can provide some insulation, and it might be a better option. But this is what I use. I have a bunch of them, so this is what I go with. And then one year I got really ambitious, and I said, I'm done with all those black tar papers because they're all ripping. So I'm gonna invest in making these plywood systems. So I only brought one piece of it, but you can imagine that there's 4 pieces, and this would be for overwintering a single hive body colony. And then I have some that are taller for double hive bodies. And because I didn't want to be cutting holes all the time at different spots, I made one big entrance so it always lines up to the upper entrance, and one big entrance so it always lines up to the bottom entrance. And so I'll push them all together. I'll put these 4 pieces of plywood and I'll screw it together. And then I have these big outer covers that'll go over the whole thing, and then it becomes one. It looks like a monster beehive because it looks like a beehive, but now it's huge. And I've been liking this method because it's easy for me. I'm usually alone, and putting these black tar papers alone around 4, and it's windy and it's flying in the wind, that can be a bit of a pain. So this is a system that I've really liked, and so you can make something like this if you wanted for 1 hive too. It's just something, like Todd said, that can keep the wind from going through the cracks of the 2 hive bodies. It provides, probably minimal amount of insulation, but a little bit of extra insulation. And then if you were really ambitious, you could paint this black and you would get that same effect from the sun. So this is what I use now.
So I think you're talking about when you have 1 brood box, basically.
This is for 1 brood box, and that's a common. I'm most of my beehives is 1 brood box now.
Harold was asking a question about that earlier in our conversation. What is the advantage of just having 1 brood box?
So I think the overwintering advantage is maybe like minimal. You probably have, you could have a little more assurance when you have 2 and your upper box is full of honey. But during the summertime, I found that having 1 brood box is a lot easier to work, because if you're looking for a queen, you only got 10 frames to go through. Normally, let's say you harvest your honey in, end of August or September, and it usually, in my experience, have given them enough time to still collect enough honey to fill that brood chamber for them to survive the winter.
Is there enough room in 1 brood box for them to store enough honey, as well as the number of bees that'll be in that 1 box? I like the idea of having more bees, and that's why I thought maybe 1 box would be better to keep the heat. But then there's a problem of them storing enough food.
Yeah, so during the summertime period, that 1 box will have almost no honey in it. It's pretty much only used to make brood.
Yeah.
Maybe the 2 outer ones might have honey. And then when it starts switching over to fall and they slow down their laying, they will store enough honey in there. And I've had successful wintering on just 1 brood box.
Because they say a good hive would have 10 to 20,000 bees. Can you get 10,000
Oh, yeah.
bees in 1 box?
Yeah, for sure.
And they can still, when they get together to make the heat in winter, they're on all the frames.
Yeah.
And it creates. See, my problem with winter.
All around that, maybe basketball size shape ball of bees. It's all honey, and again, they say your genetic stock of bees. Some eat more honey during the winter, and some have been developed to eat less honey during the winter. But lots of people in northern climates have found that single colonies work best for them, and there's no issues in overwintering them.
In my reading, they say they'll move up into the 2nd box.
Yeah.
So the whole 20,000 or 10,000 bees moved up.
Yeah.
That just because of the food situation?
Yeah, usually if you have 2 boxes, and if we were to open up Todd's boxes, which we're not going to be, my guess would be that the top box is probably really heavy, only honey, and the bottom box still, the middle frames probably have less honey or no honey, and those outside ones will. So they start at the bottom where they know they got some honey, and as they need to feed, they generally will move up.
And I also see they feed in the fall, they feed with these plastic buckets that they flip over.
Yeah. Yeah, so I use paint cans, new paint cans that pierce some holes in the top, and then you flip them over, and you're, you know, on your inner cover there's usually a hole in the center, and you'll just plop it on top of that.
But you don't do that because then the syrup will freeze though, eh?
Well, if you need to feed your bees, you have to do it when the temperature is warm enough. So nobody, if you have feed on right now, the bees are probably not eating it. You would have had to do it in September probably. Yeah. So at this point, whatever condition your bees are in, you're kind of stuck with that, right? You can do something like Todd's going to do, which is going to add some fondant, and that's like an emergency situation if they run out of all that honey. He added a little bit so you can feel more comfortable during the winter. But other than that, if your bee population is small or you don't have enough honey in there, you kind of just have to go with the flow now. Sometimes it can be a scary situation, but you got to just trust that hopefully it's going to be okay. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Usually when you have 2 brood boxes, if you have good heft and good weight, usually a sign that they're usually okay.
In my experience, when I do 2 boxes, which I still do sometimes, if that top box is really heavy, you have a lot of honey. I've almost never seen a beehive that survives the winter, that top box weigh almost nothing. It usually still weighs a lot, which means they probably ate just mostly what was in the bottom box. Again, this is my experience. It can be different for everybody, but a rule of thumb, I would say if that top box is heavy, you're probably okay. They say that
get too cold.
Following it perfectly. I'm a decent cook, but it didn't work.
Well,
So,
I'm glad to see that you've been doing it for a number of years, and you're still having
it's my first time making fondant. So I'm going to have to come back, and I think what I like about this is, and this can take us into a conversation of what are the checkpoints throughout the year, throughout the winter time. How do you curb our enthusiasm to see what's going on inside, and if the bees are living. So kind of what I like about this is I can lift up the lid, put fondant in, shut the lid. It doesn't, really interrupt them much. So I'll be able to do that, and I think hopefully check throughout the year, maybe in end of February, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
When get a nice day when it's not too bad out, and bring some more fondant and stick it in there if needed, and then maybe put some pollen in on the top boxes. The spring approaches as they begin to warm up and build brood. So what do you do? What are your checkpoints?
Yeah, so what I do, like everyone, we're excited, we're nervous and excited all winter because we're like, oh, I want those bees to survive, but you don't want to go open them up because it's cold, and you've wrapped them all up nicely, so you don't want to disturb that wrapping. So what I like to do is, so first you're going to go walk into the snow and look at your beehive. Inevitably, you're going to do it, and if you see a bunch of dead bees in the snow, that's good. A lot of people get nervous when they see dead bees because they're like, oh no, my bees are dying. But if you see no bees in the snow, unless it's fresh snow and they got covered, if you see no bees, that's a bad sign. When you see dead bees, for one, it can be the bees carrying out, some of the dead ones that already died. And it can be just some bees, have reached their lifespan and they've flown out and died, or they got cold or something. But either way, when you see dead bees, it means they were alive not long ago and they flew out and they died. So that's a good sign. Also, if you go in the snow and you see a bunch of poo in the snow, so a bunch of little yellow splatter everywhere, usually that's good too, as long as it's not too much. If you see on the side of your black paper there a bunch of streaks of yellowy brown, which looks nasty and smells nasty, that could be a sign of dysentery, which can be caused by some bee diseases. But again, you're at the time of the year that you can't do anything about it, so you just don't get too worried about it. Generally, you just want to see some dead bees and some poo, especially if it had been a mild day that allowed them to fly. But throughout most of the winter, you should see a few dead bees. So that's the first good sign. The second thing that I like to do, and I'm just gonna go behind you guys because I forgot to grab it over here, is I made this cheap little makeshift tube here. I just cut it smaller because you know, I needed it to fit in here. And I like to go up to each hive and I like to put it at that upper entrance, and I like to listen. And we can do that today and maybe get the camera close, and you should hear like a bzzz. And if you hear that, well, that's a beautiful sound. And you're happy that your bees are still alive. I really suggest you make one of these because it's 100% they're alive if you hear them, right? Then if I listen more and I don't hear anything, then I start to get concerned. Doesn't mean they're dead. And then what I'll do, and again, this is just me, so maybe some people would say, well, that's not a good thing to do. I'll give like a little knock. and then if they were just like either, say it's a 2-chamber box and they're all the way at the bottom, and maybe that's why you didn't hear them. If you give a little knock, you'll hear, they don't like that sound. And then you're like, okay, they're alive. But then if you knock really hard and you never hear anything, in my experience, 100% of the time they're dead. So this is just kind of things to put our mind at ease.
Yeah, there's not much you can do about it anyway.
I know, but you're going to see the first year beekeepers, you're going to want to go out there and see if they're alive, right? And you're right, if they're dead, there's nothing you can do about it. But it just makes us happy when we can hear them.
So I would put that to my ear maybe on a colder day when they're not going to come out of the entrance and cut the tube.
Yes, you're right. I've gone before and one come out and get me right in the neck. Oh! But like even today, they're probably not going to be flying. And yeah, we can judge it when we go out there. If you don't want to do this, it's okay. But
I'm happy to have you do it.
Yeah, for sure. This is my favorite winter tool. It really makes me happy when I hear them buzz. Yeah.
So, with all this, the flying in and flying out business, like at what kind of temperature does that sort of shut down activity-wise? Because you said today probably not warm enough. So, like. Yeah,
well, it's pretty variable, you know, because when you have this black tar paper on, and the sun comes out and it's minus 20 degrees, and if you have a really strong, healthy colony, they might come out and you might see one fly out and die, or you might see them right at the entrance doing something. So I don't know what the exact temperatures are. Generally under 10 degrees Celsius, they're not going to be flying very much. But in the winter, they need to leave the hive to defecate. They won't defecate inside the hive. In fact, you know, I haven't read this in a long time, so I don't remember exactly. I could be wrong, but I think that the bee can hold 1/3 of its total body weight in waste. They'll hold that much inside of them until they have to let it out because they can't hold it anymore, which is pretty crazy.
So can my grandson.
Like, yeah. So they need to leave the hive, and so they need these days where the sun comes out and it warms up. Otherwise, if they start leaving waste in the beehive, then you can have other effects and diseases and problems. There's something else I wanted to say with that, and now I forget.
Well, you're thinking of it.
Yeah.
So a couple of things we haven't talked about and that we're not doing here, but certainly are possible. Some people will take their bees, if they only have a couple of hives, and put them inside in a place where the bees can have a more moderate temperature, especially as our climate begins to shift and we see more radical changes in weather, where, you know, in March we can have 2 weeks of 20 plus degree temperatures, and then April it's snowing and freezing again, and these variations in temperatures, I understand, can be very hard on bees. So if they were put in and it used to be practice that people would put their hives in a the sun in the winter.
For sure. And I just remembered the last thing I want to say as far as checking your bees in the winter of signs that they may still be alive. On that little upper entrance, on a cold day, let's say, if you see little icicle, like frost kind of all around it, well, that usually means they're alive because they're releasing a lot of humidity from their bodies, and it meets that cold air and it makes a little frost. If you don't see that, that's another sign that there might be something wrong inside of your hive. But again, like you said, there's nothing we can do. So maybe just a quick talk about when you should wrap your hives and when you should unwrap your hives.
Yeah.
So, and again, everybody has a different opinion, but in my opinion, when you should wrap your hives, you have a pretty big range of time, right? It's usually when it starts, you know, when the nights get under 0 and your days are not getting above 10, that's usually when you want to do it. Also, in my experience, if you've waited and it snows, that usually makes the job harder. And also, I don't like that now you're putting a wrap on a wet hive body, and it just adds, you know, a little bit more moisture, and you know, it's not the best. So you have generally, like now with climate change, November seems to be the time that we would wrap our hives. And then when do we unwrap the hives? Well, this one, a lot of people are pretty, you know, stringent on, I wait all the way till, I don't know, sometime in April or May or something. But in my experience, once your days start to get above 10 degrees during the day, I have not found any problem with taking off the wrap, even if you get a cold snap again and it goes in the minuses. At that point, you have to remember that the bees should start laying new eggs usually in like February, a good hive. And so by March and April, their population is already going up. So if you're starting to see bees flying and the snow is leaving, I think you can take off your wrap and there's really no issue, even if it becomes cold again. That's been my experience. In fact, I like to get the wraps off as early as possible to kind of just get them to start, because when you have all that wrap on, it's harder for them to clean everything. You know, the entrances are reduced, and I just like doing that better. Things can dry up everywhere, and it's been good like that.
Do you do a spring feeding for your bees?
I never ever have fed my bees in the spring. I have, however, given pollen patties, and this is another one that there's lots of opinions on it, and I've stopped giving it to them because, for one, it's crazy how early in the spring you could see bees coming in with pollen on their legs. I don't know where they're finding this pollen, but it's like it's still snow on the ground and they're finding it.
Yeah, it is
so
crazy.
so to me, it's like, hey, they're finding their own pollen. I don't need to give it to them. And also, if you give your pollen too early, the pollen is their protein, which they're going to make brood with. So if they start eating the pollen, they're going to start making brood. They're going to start eating more honey. So let's say then it becomes cold again and there is no new honey that they can make. Well, now your honey stores are going to go down quicker than you'd like. It also can promote earlier swarming because you've given them access to make more bees quicker, and your population is going to be so huge early in the summer that they may swarm without you thinking. You know, you might be like, oh, it's not a worry, it's too early, they're not going to do that, and they may do that.
It's all a strategy, I think, in terms of hive development and your bee colony development, what you want to have. I think people who raise bees professionally tend to feed early in February to get the brood going and encourage the development of bees, because they want to split them and develop more hives. So if that's what you want to do, if you want to develop more hives and be conscious about it, or don't care if they swarm early, then that could be a strategy.
That's a really good point. You're right. It's depending on what you want to do. You know, I've had years where my goal is, I'm not going to make a lot of honey this year. I need to produce a lot of bee colonies. That would be a good time to give pollen patties. If your goal is if your area, I don't know, I mean, we're all Eastern Ontario, so we're probably all kind of the same. But let's say your area has the greatest blooms early in the summer, and maybe you'd like to have your population high at that time so you can take advantage of that bloom of whatever flower is out. But in my experience, again, these pollen patties, if your goal is just to have your beehive be mostly natural and get a nice crop of honey, you probably don't need to give them pollen patties.
So one thing I like about this for me, and for us, or Philip and I, not my bees, Philip and I are partners in crime here. I just happen to be closer to them. He's in Markham. What I like about this is the capacity to feed them without intruding on the hive. Like I can go in March and put more fondant in here if I want, in April.
Yeah.
And if they begin to build brood and eat more honey and need more food, then this is just a real simple, easy way to give them food without intruding on their personal space, so to speak, introducing too much cold to it. So it's good time to think now about strategies you might want to employ, because if you get into in March or in February, because it's too late, you know, if you don't have a mechanism and they're out of food and you've got to find a way to give them a cake or do something, you have to be really creative about it. But
a quick question on the wiring you've got there that what do they call it?
The hardware cloth, or
Hardware cloth,
Yeah.
yeah. Number 7 is supposed to be the right size.
Well,
Where do you get it?
this was pre-made. I got this up at Cleary Feed and Steed. It's a new product that he just got in. I don't think it's very much. I don't know how much. He gave me this one to show you guys, and it has 2 different sizes for the screen. So this is much smaller, and this must be the 7 that they feed through.
Yeah.
He sells the screen up there as well. He sells the small size
Well,
here.
That's the trouble. Today in the hardware stores, they don't carry that.
Yeah.
That's with that big a hole in, you know.
Yeah, I think I know that he has screen up there that I've got pieces from him, so that's just up in Spencerville.
Most of the stuff today is that imitate. Like it's not steel wiring. It's
Plastic.
plastic.
Yeah.
It's much smaller.
Yeah, I've not seen one of these. This is the first time I see it that Todd showed me, and I like it too for the fact that you said you can go in without being too invasive and add more food. What I've done in the past when I was nervous about food stocks in March, so everyone should know that you have your inner cover on your hive. For the winter, you usually flip it around, depending on the style you have, but sometimes they have one side that is all flush and the other side sort of has a rim on it. That's how mine are, at least. And you flip it to the flush side so that your styrofoam sits perfectly on it. But that also adds a little bit of space between the top bars and your inner cover now. So what I've done in the past is when I'm really nervous, I'll open up the hive, and again it's more invasive because now I'm totally opening it up, and I'll put a little piece of newspaper, and I just pour white sugar right on top of there. And so they'll eat that in worst case scenario, and that's like your last resort if in the springtime you're pretty convinced there's no food in there. What we also didn't discuss, now I'm kind of going off on the food thing, so if anyone had any questions we can go back on it, but a real issue in the wintertime is mice getting into the beehive. And I've had this issue in big problems, and it's nasty. Those little mice make a big mess and they eat all of the honeycomb, and they're really rotten. Anyway, so you want to make sure that you put on some sort of mouse guard. If you haven't already, you need to do it really soon because those mice are looking for homes right now and they would have found it, and you want to get it on there. So what I always use, which is the cheapest and simplest, and speaking of hardware cloth again, is just this little regular hardware cloth, and this one is available almost everywhere. And I just cut a piece and I fold it into a V and I shove it into the entrance. So I have all different sizes here because I have kind of different size entrances on some of my colonies, and so this has worked pretty good for me. I have seen, however, a mouse get in before, but it stops most of them. And then as far as your entrance, some people will put entrance reducers, which Todd is going to do today, right?
Yep. We have a steel plate behind it.
Okay.
It has little
that'll
multiple
be
doors.
perfect.
So
Yeah.
we're just gonna kind of close off most of the doors, leave one open so they can go in and out.
Yeah.
Drag the dead out, so
Yeah.
to speak. Fly around.
And this is another thing that everyone does a little bit differently. I don't put any reducers ever, and I have some hives that have the full size entrance, some of them that are a little bit smaller, but I don't put any reducers, and to me I've not seen any problem with that.
So the cold doesn't penetrate more?
Well, it
because
probably
of that?
does,
Yeah.
but to me it's it gets, first of all, the snow usually comes on top of that part of the hive, and second of all, I found if they really don't like the size of their entrance, they'll fill it all up with propolis to a point that they like. I have some hives that have an entrance that's this long, and they've gummed it all the way up till it's just this big, which is maybe an indication that they want one that big. And if they want that, well, I'll let them do that. And some of them don't, and they're fine. I mean, I've lost a lot of beehives in my time, and maybe it is these things. So I don't know. It's to each their own on how it all works. Also, you will, if you do have a mouse in your hive, which is kind of cool. I've seen it before where they kill the mouse and they cover it all up in propolis because that makes it'll never decompose.
It won't rot. Huh?
And that's kind of nasty, but kind of cool.
The Egyptian mouse, you find it 5,000 years later.
Yeah,
There it is.
seriously. Something else that just came into my mind. So in the springtime, like maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. Maybe this is not what we wanted to discuss. But when you've unwrapped them, it's not a bad idea to do. Is to sometimes I'll take off both hive bodies on a nice day, obviously, where they're not super aggressive, and I would sometimes scrape off the whole bottom board. I don't know if it has to do with genetics, if some bees are cleaner than others, but I found that some bees will clean it all up till there's nothing left on it, and some bees will leave it like that all year long, and then that just promotes more bugs and, you know, just more problems. So it's not a bad idea to just take a paint scraper and just quickly and get rid of all that stuff.
Do you use screen bottom boards or?
I never have, no, but I keep hearing great things about them. That was my worry always in winter. That seems like a lot of cold air getting in there,
Yeah,
but
well, that's my next question. If you would just go back to a regular bottom board in the winter.
Well, I've heard that you can slide in like I think an inch insulation in there.
Yeah, usually it's so hard. They put so much crap in there
Yeah,
that you can't
Yeah,
get the little
that's
board
true.
in.
yeah. I think probably putting something in there, you know, because that is a big open space.
But I know some people do just leave it to screen all year long.
Yeah.
And again, they'll have survival. So we don't know if we're just lucky some years or if these things work or don't work. I think beekeeping is really something that you take everyone's advice, you try some things, and when you're happy with something, then that's what works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the screens, you know, some people have the screens in so they can do mite checks on the whiteboard underneath. I don't know if any of you are doing that or not. It's one way to do it. I got one of these from Connor at Cleary as well with the intention. Our intention is to put a screen on the bottom of it and then fill it with wood chips so that the bees actually have more of a natural environment at the base of the hives that they can keep clean. It's just like more like being in a tree for them. And Connor is at Cleary is doing some experimenting with mites that actually are enemies to the varroa mite and fight them, which he has them live in his wood chips down there. Creates a little environment for them. So something to think about.
Yeah, there's always new things coming out, and anything to help our bees survive a little bit easier.
Any questions? Anything we've been yakking away that you've been burning to ask that we haven't covered?
Everyone who has bees here, are your bees already wrapped, or are you coming here because you're like, oh, I want to see how they're wrapping it? So yours are not wrapped? No, but are you both planning on wrapping them? Yeah?
I'll wait to next week's supposed to be warm, like 12 or 13 degrees again. So.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it's a problem. Like people who have wrapped, if it gets 12 or 13 degrees, it's probably not going to make a big difference either.
Yeah, I think as it gets into March, you know, like it's been in the 20s in March here before, so
yeah.
It's really going. That's my question, is when to take the wrap off, and I think probably once March hits, they can probably handle anything. If they made it that far, then they can probably handle anything that comes at them.
Yeah, I would say again, and I know we just discussed it briefly, but if your hive survived and you're seeing a lot of activity on these random days that get warm, or if you were really ambitious and you did a quick peek and it looks like you have a big colony. So like the best case scenario is they've started making brood in February. Now you have a really nice sized colony. If that's the case, in my experience, you can unwrap them, you know, in March or whenever it looks like it's starting to get warmer, and they're at a point that they can really take care of themselves now. Even if it gets cold again, they're going to be fine. If you opened up your hive and you only had this little colony that survived, that's a different case. And maybe you're going to want to leave that wrap on a little longer. And you're going to know which one you have, just based on those hot days when you walk by, the activity that's going on there. You might, when you have a little one like this, you might not see any activity. You might think they haven't survived until you open it up. Yeah.
So would you, if you had that case, would you add one of those pollen cakes to help
Yeah, well, when you have a little baseball of bees that have survived, it's a tough situation for them at that point. Probably if you even add a pollen patty, that's not the issue at that point, right? The issue is now they don't have a lot of bees to keep a lot of brood warm, so they can only lay in this little area, and so the population never has a chance to really grow. The best thing to do in that case, if first to confirm that you have a queen in there, and second would be if you have 2 hives and one of them is super strong and one of them is like this, when the weather permits, it would be to go in there and steal some bees and babies and add it to that hive. That's another probably webinar for another day, because when you have 2 hives near each other like that, that can be a little complicated, but that's something you should consider and look into.
Yeah, well, won't they, if the bees are transferred, won't they go out and they go back to
Yeah,
the
that's why I'm saying it's a little more complicated, but usually if you take a bee frame.
Yeah, that's just makes sense. Okay. You got a line. I'd take maybe a drill. Go that way. I took an X-Acto knife, and and sometimes you don't get it right, so I think I had mine upside down, one upside down. But there is instructions in the little brochure. It's like anything else.
So online there was also a corrugated plastic.
It's supposed to turn into a fondant type candy. It's supposed to turn white. And you can, it's like taffy, but you can hold it in your hands. I could not get it to do it. My first ratio was wrong because I did it by weight rather than by volume. And so I don't know what the, I don't know.
I've made it where it's not pliable enough, and it just gets hard.
I know.
Too,
Maybe my thermometer might be wrong and I just didn't get it hot enough. So.
Are you gonna put that silicone tray right in there? Or?
No, because they have to feed. They don't come up through the screen here.
So you'll make another one?
Yeah.
Is that your plan?
Yeah,
And come back another day?
I actually, my first one just came out as a block of sugar because it was hard. So I actually have a whole block of sugar that I can fit in there.
That would be okay too.
So this is supposed to solidify?
It's supposed to, yeah. It doesn't look like it's going to make it though.
Well, it freezes, eh?
But it's never lost. You can always stick it out by the hives and they'll always,
Yeah,
they're
always
coming.
eat
Or a
it.
raccoon will come lick it up.
Yeah.
They'll still eat that even if you leave that there.
Yeah, like I said, I pour just white sugar and they'll
Okay,
eat that
yeah,
too.
yeah.
So they'll eat anything that's sugar. But I think what Todd's concerned, if you pour this, it's gonna drip
Oh,
through.
yeah.
Is that's why you don't want to put that, right?
Yeah. It's too liquidy. The fondant apparently breaks down the sugar so that it's more easily digestible. I think the whole process of heating it transforms the sugar itself, and then it's whipped into something that can be molded and handled, and it's more solid. So that's why I think they make the fondant, just because it's, in the wintertime it gives less work for them to digest it and less energy for them, because it's all about conserving energy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you ever use burlap to absorb the moisture rather than?
Yeah, I saw one guy was using burlap in his.
I made one of these, and I had a hole in the middle, and then a little board inside, and where you kept the fondant,
Yeah.
and then the rest is burlap over it. And
Yeah,
then if you check it, and the burlap's wet, well, you put new burlap in.
Yeah.
Rather than let it freeze. And
Yeah, that's the type of Vivaldi box that I've seen before. It's basically has a solid bottom with a hole in the middle, and you make a little square box with this screen over the top of it so they can't get out.
Yeah, so
and you stick that over the hole.
This looks
so
more, to me, I think I prefer this idea, even if I just put burlap in there and didn't, because then you can change it.
yeah, it's a clever design.
Yeah.
We'll see how it works.
Yeah, I like that.
If they live, well, it's all business.
Yes, exactly.
We'll see. Well, shall we carry some stuff over there? And
Yeah, I'll carry your thing here.
So we're going to go over, and I don't know how the bees are going to be today. We're thinking that they're not going to be too active because it is cool out. It's windy. That's all in our favor. I'm going to screw these reducers on the front so that can get them a little excited. As you face the hives, the hive on the right is a little more excitable than the one on the left. So just watch for action out of there. That's probably where, if we're going to get any action today, that will be the main part of it. So I think I'm happy for people to move to your comfort level. You might just want to make sure who's around you. If we get too close, wear a mask. I would make sure that there's no one behind you in case you want to run. Just you don't want to trip or run into anybody. So just.
But they'll run after you. Don't you?
Yeah. So let's take. What's that?
You don't have to run the bee, just the person beside you.
That's right. You have to run fast with the person beside you. Pete, good stapler.
Yeah, well, you could wrap
If
yourself
anybody
up
wants
if
to
it's
take a
cold.
chair, you're more than welcome. We have some folding chairs. You're more than welcome to grab one and sit at an appropriate distance.
How about you?
Brian Lacey, Blue Shoes.
I normally use twine up my hay bales.
Did you see that
I don't
video
have many more, so I put on
between the lid
Yeah?
and the frames?
Oh yeah, they
So
make
that-
that stuff everywhere.
Yeah, so I actually ended up putting a piece of denim on top of it.
Oh yeah?
Kind of a blanket.
A lot of people do that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I saw it on a video from Guelph too.
Yeah.
They have a piece of canvas.
Say they're good for mosquitoes.
But now I don't want to take it off because it stops me from gluing the lid down to the frames. I don't know.
Well, as long as you have that upper entrance that's available,
yeah,
maybe you can.
Entrance, and there's still a gap in the denim.
Oh well, then I think you should be okay.
Yeah. We'll see.
We will. You'll see. Yeah.
Did we get the other?
Yeah. Nick has the other one.
Okay, great. We'll walk over the garden. There's nothing was coming out of it yesterday. Yesterday they were just all out of this one.
So, are your inner covers right now flipped over?
I think so.
Or I guess does it matter for you at this? Or,
I don't think it would matter.
well, we'll see when we take them
We'll see
off.
what- yeah.
Maybe once we take off a cap of one, we'll just try my listener, and if it works, then you could get the camera close. I think that would be. I think it'd be good for the viewers. I tell you, this thing's great. Do you want me to take off this cap here, Todd?
Sure.
Okay, so just so everyone sees here, Todd's inner cover is different than mine. It has like a ledge on top and the bottom probably, but there is this little hole, and during the summer generally this little hole is on the top, and in the winter we flip it to the bottom. And this is because now there's access directly into the beehive, and the airflow is a lot better. Okay, we just saw a couple of bees flying around. So again, everyone should be careful. Once we're gonna take that stapler and staple, that's a pretty big sound and shake on a beehive, and they don't love that. So when we get to that point, maybe we'll see how it goes. But what I wanted to show everyone is how, so I always come up to this little hole, and he's got 3 hive bodies here, so it might work better on this beehive, because probably if I just look in here, there is no bees right on the top, right? They're probably all the way down here, so I might not even hear them up here, so we'll test it better on that one after. But I just go up to it, and I can hear them on this one. So you hear like a little hum. Obviously we saw some bees flying out, so we know it's good. But on the next one, maybe we'll get the camera close. I don't know if you'll be able to hear, but it'd be kind of cool to hear it. Okay?
Yeah. So yesterday, same thing. They were silent like they were today, and so I cracked the top and lifted it up, and one flew out and hit me right in the face. So, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna put on my veil because I've been stung in the face enough times that I don't even want to take that chance.
Yeah.
And I also, you know, Todd works with these bees. When you work with your own bees, you get a little bit of a sense how aggressive they are. I've never seen these bees, so I don't know what they're like, and I don't want to go home with a big swollen face. So I'm going to put this on, okay?
So we have our upper entrance here, and I put in 2 inches of insulation in the top of this piece. I don't have a deep lid. I just have a standard lid. So I just picked up one of those that was really pretty cheap. I think that's basically it.
But do you want to put this on now?
Oh yeah, we'll put that on. So that's it for the top. That's it for the top.
You want to grab that?
Oh, great.
There's the instructions.
Yours on there?
Yep.
It's a nice tight fit,
You
eh?
should have read them for them, Wally. You read it for us. Make sure we're doing it right. So this hive, we had a video we took about 3 weeks ago. We looked inside it. This top is just full of honey. They've really filled it up. Their brood boxes are full of honey. So since it's the first year, we're going to leave this on. And if they need it, they need it. If they don't, we'll get it in the spring. So it's no skin off anyone's neck. This hive struggled. We had a super on it as well. It barely even put wax on half of them, and that was it. And it did not fill up. It left basically 2 frames here that were only half full of honey. So they were struggling a little bit more. That's why I'm going to give them the Vivaldi box with the sugar on top of it, because they're more likely to need something in the winter if they make it through. They're a lot more active than this hive, and so it really surprised me. What's that?
That's a kind word.
That's a kind word, yes. They have the distinction of stinging everybody we know. So when we installed them, they didn't like the truck right here as a nuke, and yeah, it was fun.
So just looking at this one here, Todd, you may not even have to cut a hole here because it's, you know, if you put a staple right here, we know it's going to be okay. Right?
Yeah. It's we have I think we have that super on it.
Yeah.
On top, so it is a little taller than what these normally cover. We'll see how it covers the next one. So.
Yeah, and like Todd was saying, that they opened up this beehive recently, and that top super is full of honey. It probably is of zero concern that this beehive runs out of food. In most cases, I wouldn't be concerned with this.
No. I think if it runs out of food, then
It's something else.
what are they doing?
Yeah.
Something's attacked them.
Yeah.
I think that's basically it.
I think so. It looks good. It
The
leaves.
bottom there.
It left enough room there for the bees to still come out. When I use those black tar papers, sometimes they have a tendency to droop a bit, and they would cover the entrance. So that's why I'd come back and check sometime in the midwinter. But this one looks like probably is going to do a nice job at just staying there and keeping all the entrances open.
Oh, so
Oh,
I made it too tall. I'll have to come back and remake this again. I made it too tall to fit under my tabs here.
Yeah.
So I chose the screwdriver over the drill just for vibrations.
Well, that's a good idea. Because a hive that's aggressive, that, you know, it doesn't take much sometimes.
So do you do more than put a stone on top?
Yeah, so in the beginning when I started, I would put I have old bricks, and I'd have a brick, and then I would put a string kind of around, wrapping it all together. And then I stopped doing that, and I just kept it like you do, and I've never seen a cap fly off with, especially you got a pretty big rock on there, I would really not be worried with that.
Well, they've glued this board on with propolis, but they haven't glued this on. So
But that's
I may come back and put a strap around there just to be safe, because I don't want this to blow off. and I don't come out all the time to check them. So this is a
And so even like when you're looking at your beehive at this time of the year, it's really not a good idea to pull out frames. But just by me looking down here, you can, and these bees are pretty active, like Todd said, they're all walking around here. But you could see that these top frames are full of honey. You could, if we took this off, we'd have a pretty good idea just looking down what kind of situation it is as far as honey in there.
Anybody
Okay.
want to look in?
Maybe you want to get the camera right in there, Zach.
See him moving?
Oh yeah. Beautiful.
You want to listen with this, Stephanie? Or you? Tell us what you hear. Put it right. No, put it right on this hole right here.
On the hole?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my god.
A big buzz?
Could it go in my ear though?
Yeah, I think it could go up in your ear.
I think one just came out of it.
Did one come through?
I think it did.
Oh. Yeah. You'll have to bring it. You'll have to get right into here.
wasn't offering it to you.
You do the aggressive one.
I guess only the people online would know.
Hopefully you guys were able to hear that.
That's right. That's right.
It's loud.
Yeah, you always want to be careful. Hey, you want to put that up to the beehive and listen?
Did it come into your house? I'm sorry.
Oh no, I don't know.
Loud part of that.
You might go home to Montreal with a bee.
Can I peek in?
Yeah, for sure.
So like real active.
It's another like indicator when we see a lot of bees walking around here that it's a first sign that the population is probably, at least it's not a baby population in here, right?
Yeah.
If we didn't see any bees walking around, it doesn't mean they're not big, but this is just a first good sign.
I'm gonna get this cat before any more of them take flight.
Or they go for Stephanie's hair again. Something too that we should just mention, and maybe Todd will want to do this, but when I use the styrofoam on top of the beehives, and when Todd uses something like this, when your cap has all this burr comb here, you're going to want to scrape that off because it's not going to sit well on something like this, and especially not well on a styrofoam piece. So it's, some people would collect this to
Is that mostly propolis?
no, well, this is mostly all wax. There is like a line of propolis where your cover would have ended there. But some people collect this, and I mean, this is not a lot of wax to make a candle. But if you collect it all year long, you might collect enough to do something with it. I usually just toss it on the ground. Oh, actually, let's put your cozy on there first. So these ones sometimes are a bit different now because the cap is going to, you have to kind of tuck it in.
My entrance is down here.
Yeah, that's the only problem I found. They either got a drill with a little bit of a wood bit on it to find the hole. Last year I used an X-Acto,
Yeah.
2 inches open, but
Yeah.
and put a little blocking in there, just like another stick. Just you want it tight, but you want to
Yeah.
make sure they can get in and out.
Well, I think once you cut this hole, then if you staple right around it, then you should be good for there. But you're right, it's not always easy finding the right spot.
Carpenter working blind.
Yeah.
We're gonna find out what's inside here.
Oh yeah, eh?
Oops. Because That's a good idea.
That ruins your insulation better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good idea. It's a luxury hotel.
I found that sometimes when you put your engine releaser up, because you got your bottom closed off there now,
Yeah.
that sort of staple.
Well, once you get your piece of wood, that'll lift it up there later, right?
Yeah.
So a couple staples there.
Yeah. Hey, honey. Come from behind, huh?
They're active.
Not too bad. They're definitely interested in what's going on up there.
Yeah.
So, if anyone is interested to come and look inside now because the screen's here and they can't get out, you can see what they're up to. I think that top board is not going to fit. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, no, that's the thing. Sometimes you can usually tuck them in, but we'll see what it says.
I know one other pointer that was suggested to me was I had a couple just cedar shingles or a couple wedges just to put them slightly off level a little bit so the water drains off the top. So the water from here doesn't roll in.
Oh, so you get it. So it's
Just
Tilt it back?
a little bit, just
Yeah, a lot
off
of-
level, so that water drains.
yeah, and that'll work on this because I have insulation in this box underneath it,
Yeah.
so that it's not going to leave an air crack, that will cause problems. Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, some people will do that too, just if like water builds up on the bottom board too, to drain that one as well. To tip the whole hive a little bit like that.
It doesn't need to be much either.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to do that.
You want to try and get this cap on?
Yep.
It's going to be a tight fit, I think.
Let's lift it out here.
Do you want to push down the insulation or do you want to tuck it in?
And,
I don't think it'll tuck in, right? We can pull down some of the black here.
so for the top, my tops, and I don't know if your tops are probably similar, they don't really slide over top of that black plastic.
Yeah, I play with it like you do. You'll get the fit. That's good. A little more to the
Maybe it doesn't even fit on this
Yeah.
Vivaldi box.
Yeah,
That can happen sometimes.
Yeah,
Right?
you just got a hair, so you might have to.
Yeah, I don't know, Todd. I think it's
So it's the box that's not fitting
Yeah.
out. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You just out a hair, you might just have to shave that one board like an eighth of an
Pete's
inch.
carving tools we took off or
Yeah.
have them out here. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. That's totally what it is. It's just
just missing a hair.
I'll have to tell Connor that. You know, we could shave off the side of the
Yeah,
Vivaldi
that
box.
one might be
too.
easier.
But at this point, I'll do the cap.
Are the two tops the exact same size?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they'd be mass produced, be the same size. So whoever made the Vivaldi box as a new product has just made it just a bit too snug. So
But for now, this will be with the rock on it. It should be fine until you fix it up.
yeah.
Anyway, so this is sort of this is Todd's setup, and they're ready to go pretty much now for the winter.
So what we call this is how how to create an hour-long workshop out of something that takes 3 minutes to do. But you get to meet people and talk about things and have a glass of cider and a cookie.
Yeah, well, I mean, even for people who haven't wrapped yet, if you were planning on doing exactly what Todd was doing, now you have an idea that check to make sure your cap fits on top of whatever, you're adding beforehand, right? So it's good information, even if it only took a few minutes, I think. And I've never seen these wraps, and I quite like it. It looks really cozy.
Yeah, it was slick.
Yeah.
And I think you're right about the tape, putting a piece of tape over here and just to close off the insulation and protect that a little bit more.
And now you can see these bees are really curious what's going on.
Yeah.
But that's normal, so. Anyways, I guess that's it. You want to close it out?
All right, thanks for joining us, everyone. That's the end of the workshop for today. So this workshop will be posted onto YouTube and onto the River Rapport website, which is riverrapport.ca/workshop. So if you'd like to see this workshop or any other ones, they'll be posted on our website at riverrapport.ca/workshops. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
And any questions you've had at all throughout this workshop, make sure to leave them in the comments. Someone will do their best to reply to them with any answers.
Yes. Any questions, we will get to them. Please put them in the comment section. Thanks.